Welcome back, everyone, to my channel. Tonight's theme is one that will make any traveler think twice before hitting the open road alone. These are 3 true truck driver horror stories, from men and women who spend most of their lives behind the wheel, driving through empty highways, forgotten rest stops, and places where help never comes fast enough. So buckle up, turn the lights down, and listen closely, because sometimes what waits on the side of the road is not always human. Story 1. The night route through Nevada. I have been a truck driver for almost 20 years. You get used to long nights, open highways, and the strange things that come with isolation. But there is one night I will never forget. A delivery that took me through a lonely stretch of desert in Nevada, where I truly began to question what was real. It was late summer of 2018. I was hauling refrigerated goods from California to Utah. My route was simple, but the company sent me through a back highway to save time. The road cut through endless desert, nothing but sand, low hills, and the occasional gas station every 100 miles or so. I started my drive around 9 p.m. from Barstow, expecting to reach my rest stop before dawn. I had done night routes before. I even preferred them. Less traffic, less noise, and a strange kind of peace when you are the only one on the road. But that night, something felt off from the start. The desert was unusually still. No wind, no sound. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. I remember adjusting the air conditioning because the cabin suddenly felt too warm, even though the outside temperature was dropping fast. About 2 hours in, I saw the first sign of life and a flicker of red taillights far ahead. Another truck, maybe. I kept a steady pace, watching as the lights grew closer. But then, they vanished. No curve in the road, no turnoff. Just gone. At first I thought maybe it was a trick of distance, or maybe the driver turned his lights off for some reason. But who would do that on an empty desert highway? I slowed down, uneasy. The CB radio crackled. Just static, then silence. I tried, calling out, "This is Route 6 northbound, anyone out here tonight?" No answer. After another half hour, I spotted a small rest area. Just one of those roadside pull-ins with 2 benches, a trash bin, and an old light pole buzzing weakly. I pulled over to stretch my legs and check my tires. When I stepped outside, the air was freezing. And that's when I noticed there were footprints in the sand beside my truck. They looked fresh, leading from the dark desert toward the back of my trailer. My first thought was that someone might be trying to steal from the cargo. I grabbed. My flashlight called out, "Hey, anyone back there?" No response. I walked slowly toward the rear. The sand crunched beneath my boots, and I could hear the faint hum of the truck's engine. When I rounded the back corner, my beam caught something, a shape crouched by the trailer's doors. It was a man. He was wearing a hooded jacket, his back turned to me. But what made my stomach twist was how still he was, not moving, not reacting, just crouched there, like he had been frozen mid-action. "Hey!" I shouted again. "You need to back away from my truck." He did not move. I took another cautious step forward, and the man slowly turned his head just enough for the light to hit his face. His eyes were open wide. His skin was pale like ash. And his mouth. It looked like he was trying to say something, but no sound came out. Then, just as suddenly as I saw him, the light flickered, and he was gone. I jumped back, sweeping the flashlight across the sand. Nothing. No footprints leading away. No sign of movement. I ran back to the cab, locked the doors, and sat there, breathing hard, trying to make sense of it. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe the shadows played tricks on me. But when I checked my mirrors, I swear I saw something move behind the truck again. Just a quick shape, low to the ground, disappearing into the darkness. That was enough. I threw the truck in gear and got back on the road, my hands trembling on the wheel. For the next hour, I kept checking my mirrors, every few seconds scanning the empty highway behind me. Nothing but the rhythmic flash of white lines under my headlights. Around 2 a.m., I saw another light ahead, a small diner, glowing faintly in the distance. The sign read, Earl's stop-in. Looked old, abandoned almost, but I needed coffee, maybe some clarity. When I pulled in, there were 2 cars parked outside, both covered in dust. The lights inside were dim, flickering yellow through dusty windows. I stepped in. The air smelled stale, like old grease and cigarette smoke. A single waitress stood behind the counter, staring blankly at a small TV that was not even on. She turned slowly when she saw me. "Coffee?" she asked, her voice dry, toneless. Yeah, black," I said, sitting down. As she poured, I asked, "Is there another town up this way? I've been driving a long stretch with nothing around." She looked at me for a moment, then said, "You're on Route 6, right? There has not been traffic through here in months. They shut that section down after the accident." I frowned. "What accident?" She hesitated, then pointed toward the window. "About 15 miles back. A driver overturned his rig and burned. They say he was hauling fuel. No one ever found his body." I felt my chest tighten. 15 miles back was right where I had stopped, where I saw that man. I asked, "When did that happen?" She said quietly, "Last year. Same week, same night." The coffee went cold in my hands. I tried to laugh it off, asked if she was serious. She only nodded, eyes dull like she had told that story too many times before. I thanked her, paid, and left. As I climbed back into my truck, I glanced toward the road, and my blood froze. Standing just beyond the diner's light, facing me, was that same man in the hooded jacket, motionless, watching. I blinked, and he was gone again. That was the last time I ever drove that route. Now, even years later, when I pass through Nevada, I take the long way around, because whatever I saw that night, whether it was real or not, it has never left me. And sometimes, when I check my mirrors at night, I still half expect to see him standing on the shoulder of the highway, watching, waiting, and that is when I realized he was still standing there. Story 2. The rest stop visitor I used. To think being a truck driver meant freedom, long roads, quiet nights, and time to think. That was before the job showed me how lonely the world can get after midnight. My name's Mark, and I've been driving long-haul routes for 12 years. This story happened in 2019, somewhere along Interstate 80 in Nebraska. It was one of those routes where the darkness feels heavier than usual, like the air itself does not want you there. I was hauling lumber from Oregon to Illinois, making good time, when I realized I was too tired to keep pushing. Around 2 a.m., I saw a small sign that read, "Rest Stop, 1 mile." I decided to pull in, take a nap, and hit the road again before sunrise. When I rolled in, the place was empty except for one old sedan parked at the far end. The lights in the parking lot flickered like they were dying. I parked near the vending machines, left my headlights on for a second, and looked around. Sedan's windows were tinted and I could not tell if anyone was inside. I shut off the engine, locked the doors, and leaned back in my seat. I set my alarm for an hour, closed my eyes, and tried to relax. But I never fell asleep. Instead, I kept hearing faint sounds outside, like soft footsteps crunching on gravel. Every few minutes I would open my eyes, look around, see nothing, and tell myself I was imagining it. After 15 minutes, I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and noticed something strange. The sedan that was parked at the far end was now gone. I hadn't heard it start or drive off. Trying to shake off the unease, I decided to stretch my legs. I stepped outside, lit a cigarette, and stood under the buzzing light. The night was quiet except for the hum of insects. When I turned toward the restroom building, I noticed something written on the wall in black marker. It said, "Do not sleep here." Underneath that, smaller letters read, "He walks the rows." I stared at it for a moment, thinking it was some prank, then went back to my truck. As I climbed in, I glanced across the lot. A figure stood near the vending machines, tall, thin, wearing a reflective vest like a road worker. I figured it was another driver stretching his legs, so I waved. He didn't move. He just stood there, head tilted slightly, facing me. I watched for a few seconds before turning the key and starting the truck. The man stepped closer, slowly, his movements jerky, almost unsteady. I turned on my headlights, and that's when I realized his vest wasn't reflective at all. It was just wet. He stopped at the edge of the light, and I could see him more clearly. His clothes were soaked, dark patches running down his arms. His face looked pale, like he had been standing in the cold for hours. I honked once, hoping it would make him back off. He didn't. Instead, he raised one hand and pointed directly at me. Not a wave, a slow, accusing point, like he was marking me. Then he turned and walked toward the back of my truck. Every instinct told me to get out of there. I shifted into drive and hit the gas, pulling onto the highway as fast as I could. My heart was racing. I checked my mirrors. Nothing but the dark stretch of the road behind me. I kept driving for almost 20 miles before I finally began to calm down. That's when I saw headlights behind me. They came out of nowhere, small and dim at first, then growing brighter. I thought maybe it was another trucker, but the light stayed low, like from a car. I looked closer. It was the same old sedan from the rest stop. My stomach dropped. The driver kept tailing me, maintaining the same distance for miles. I sped up, he sped up. I slowed down. He slowed down. I grabbed the CB radio and tried calling out for anyone nearby. No response. The highway was dead silent. Then suddenly the sedan's lights cut off. Complete darkness behind me. I stared at the mirrors, waiting for the glow to come back, but it never did. I thought maybe he pulled over, so I kept going. About 10 minutes later, I approached another rest stop. I figured it was better to be around people, so I decided to pull in. The lot was lit up and had 3 other trucks parked there. I parked near one of them, killed the engine, and stepped out. Relief washed over me. Finally, I was not alone. But then I saw it. At the far end of the lot, the same old sedan sat parked under the last light. The driver's door was open. No one inside. I wanted to tell someone, so I walked toward the nearest truck and knocked on the driver's door. A middle-aged guy looked out and frowned at me. I told him quickly what happened. The man, the sedan, how it followed me here. He climbed out with a flashlight, and we both walked over to check it out. The sedan was empty. The engine was cold. And in the dust on the hood, someone had traced 5 fingerprints, smudged and long like they had been pressed hard. We both felt uneasy, so we went back to our trucks. He told me to get some rest and lock my doors. I nodded, though I knew I wasn't going to sleep. About an hour later, I heard tapping. 3 slow knocks on my driver's side window. I froze. I looked out. Nothing. Just the reflection of my own face in the glass. Then another 3 knocks, this time on the passenger side. I turned my head, and that's when I saw him. The man from before, standing just outside, his face inches from the window. His skin looked gray under the light, and his eyes were wide open, unblinking. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. It looked like he was saying, "Let me in." I reached for the ignition, but before I could start the truck, he was gone again. I didn't think. I slammed the truck into gear and peeled out of that lot. I drove until dawn, not stopping until I reached a busy truck stop near Omaha. I parked in broad daylight, surrounded by people, but my hands were still shaking. I went inside, got coffee, and told another driver what happened. He just stared at me for a second, then asked which rest stop I meant. When I told him, his face went pale. He said, "Man, that place? They found a body there years ago. A highway worker. Got hit while helping a trucker fix a flat. Driver said he never saw him until it was too late." I laughed nervously, thinking he was messing with me, but he shook his head. They say he still walks around there at night, looking for the driver who left him. I never went back to that stretch of Interstate 80. Even now, whenever I pass through Nebraska, I take a detour, because I can still see his face pressed against that glass, his mouth moving silently, asking me to open the door. And that is when I realized he never left the rest stop. Story 3. The Highway Breakdown. I have been driving trucks for over a decade, and in all that time, I have had my share of breakdowns in the middle of nowhere. But there is one night I still cannot forget. A night that made me question every dark shape I have seen on the side of the road since. It happened in the fall of 2021, somewhere along Route 50, the loneliest road in America. If you have ever driven it, you know why they call it that. You can go hours without seeing another car, and at night the desert around you feels endless, like you are driving across the surface of another planet. That night started normal enough. I was hauling electronics from Reno to Denver, making good time. The sky was clear, stars bright overhead, and I had music playing low just to fill the silence. Around 11 p.m., my dashboard light flickered. Then, without warning, the truck sputtered. The engine coughed twice and died. I coasted to the shoulder, the headlights cutting through the dark until they dimmed to nothing. I sat there staring at the gauges, tapping them like that would fix anything. The nearest town was almost 50 miles away. My cell service was gone too. It was just me, my rig, and the endless night. I got out to check the engine. The cold hit me hard. Desert nights can drop to near freezing. I grabbed my flashlight, lifted the hood, and stared at the machinery like I knew what to do. I did not. Everything looked fine, but the engine refused to turn over. I tried the ignition again, and that is when I heard it. A faint sound like footsteps crunching gravel behind me. I turned, expecting to see headlights from another vehicle, but the road was empty. My beam caught nothing but sand and scrub. I told myself it was just wind, but the air was still. I climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and decided to wait for morning. I left the flashlight on the dash to give a bit of light. Minutes dragged by like hours. Then through the dim glow I saw movement in my side mirror, a figure walking along the shoulder. I leaned forward, squinting. Whoever it was, they were moving slowly, almost limping, heading straight toward my truck. I rolled the window down a few inches and called out, "Hey, you okay out there?" No answer. The person kept walking until they reached the back of my trailer, then stopped. I waited for them to come closer or say something, but they just stood there. After a few minutes, I stepped down from the cab, flashlight in hand. I kept my voice firm. "You need help?" The beam found nothing. No one there. The sand was smooth, untouched. My heart began to race. I circled the trailer, scanning every inch. Empty road, silent desert. I climbed back into the cab, breathing fast, and locked the doors again. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks. Then I heard a soft thud from behind the sleeper compartment. It was faint but distinct, like someone tapping the metal from the outside. I froze. The sound came again, then stopped. I turned off the flashlight and sat in total darkness, listening. Nothing. I waited another hour before exhaustion took over and I dozed off in the seat. I woke up sometime later to a distant noise. An engine. Headlights appeared in the distance, growing brighter. A tow truck. Relief washed over me. I jumped out and waved as it slowed beside me. The driver leaned out and yelled, "You the guy who called?" I said no, I had no signal. He frowned, climbed down, and said, "Dispatch said a truck broke down here an hour ago. Guess that was you." He looked over my rig, scratched his head, and said, "Battery's fine. Might be your fuel line." We hooked up a light to the engine bay and he went to his truck to grab tools. I stood beside my cab looking around the highway. The wind had picked up now, whistling through the desert brush. Then I saw it again. Someone standing far down the road, just at the edge of the light. "Hey," I called to the tow guy. "You see that?" He turned, squinting. "See what?" I pointed, but the figure was gone. He laughed. "You been out here long? Happens. This road messes with your eyes." He finished checking the truck and told me to try starting it again. The engine roared back to life like nothing had ever been wrong. I thanked him, offered to pay, but he shook his head. "Company will bill you. Just stay safe. Weird stuff happens out here." He climbed back into his tow truck, gave me a wave, and drove off. I watched his taillights fade into the distance. I sat there for a few minutes, letting the truck idle, calming my nerves. Then I noticed something strange. The flashlight I had left on the dash earlier was now sitting on the passenger seat, turned off. I was sure I had not touched it. I picked it up, switched it on, and the beam hit the floor mat. There were muddy footprints leading from the passenger door to the back of the cab. My chest went cold. I checked the door, still locked. I crawled into the sleeper area, heart pounding. The smell hit me first, and damp like wet earth. Then I saw the marks on the sheets, streaks of mud and sand. Whoever had been walking outside had been inside my truck. I jumped out and scanned the ground. The footprints led away from the cab, down the slope toward the desert. They stopped about 20 feet out. Just stopped, like the person vanished into thin air. I didn't wait to find out more. I slammed the door shut, threw the truck into gear, and drove. I kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead, not daring to check the mirrors. I did not stop until sunrise when I reached a small gas station outside Ely. I pulled in, shaking, and went inside to wash up. The clerk, a woman in her 50s, looked at me and said, "Rough night?" I nodded, told her I had broken down on Route 50. Her smile faded. "Out there," she said. "You are lucky someone stopped for you." I asked what she meant. She leaned closer. "We had a driver disappear out there last year. Tow truck found his rig still running, lights on, door open. No sign of him. I told her a tow truck had helped me too, fixed the engine, and left." She frowned. "At this hour? Honey, we do not have night patrols on that road anymore. Too many accidents." I just stared at her. My throat went dry. "So, who helped me?" I asked. She did not answer. I walked back out to the truck, checked everything again. The fuel line, the engine, the tires. All fine. But when I climbed into the cab, I noticed one last thing. The passenger seatbelt was buckled. I had been driving alone the whole time. Since that night, I avoid Route 50 entirely. I do not care how much longer the trip takes. Sometimes when the radio static cuts in on quiet nights, I hear a faint voice through the noise. It sounds like someone saying, "Need a tow?" And that is when I realized I was never stranded alone on that road. Thank you for listening to these 3 true truck driver horror stories. If you have ever experienced something unexplainable on the road, something that made you question what you saw, share it in the comments below. Your story might be featured in a future video. Until next time, drive safe and keep your eyes on the road, because sometimes the things you pass in the dark might be watching you too.